Say hello to the all-new Alexa Plus and see how Alexa can do so much more for you. Need tickets to see your favorite artist? Craving your comfort restaurant? Just sit back, relax, and talk naturally. Alexa's on it. It learns your style, anticipates what's next, and makes it happen across Echo, Fire TV, and more. Learn more at amazon.com/new Alexa.
From pop culture to politics, this is the Michael Medved Show.
And another great day, another great week, in fact, during this great holiday season here in this greatest nation on God's green earth. The greatness of the nation demonstrated last night with a Kennedy Center's Awards that was featuring as MC, as host, the President of the United States. And no, he did not give himself an award, but he didn't need to. He has been celebrating his own takeover of the Kennedy Center, and he apparently was very directly, personally involved in selecting the Kennedy Center Awards nominees. This is for a lifetime of artistic achievement. The list of his nominees, well, it's fascinating. And maybe a little bit surprising, at least in the terms of some of the people that President Trump chose to award. Meanwhile, is the economy stupid? The Trump administration has voiced optimism and urged patience as Americans continue to face persistently high prices. That is reported by CNN. The Wall Street Journal also has a front page story that needs to be confronted about how people have a very negative view about the current state of the economy and their own economic future. And this impacts spending. It impacts that economic future. We will get to that. Marjorie Taylor Greene, and President Trump, again, used his new pet name for her. His new pet name is Marjorie Trader Brown. And why Brown? Because he said that's what happens when things go rotten. They turn brown. And she now is a major enemy of President Trump. She is also an enemy of a lot of his followers. She has reported over 700 death threats over the course of her service. The U.S. Capitol Police received 773 reports of death threats from Greene's office since she joined Congress in 2021. According to Greene, all of the death threats came from the left until I stood with the Epstein survivors. They now apparently come predominantly from the right. Speaking of left and right, there is also a not politically ideological group, but a group of terrorists and murderers and a sadistic, really subhuman operation called Hamas. And that militant group, it is described, The Hill is reporting that a Hamas official has, within the last 24 hours, said the militant group is ready to discuss freezing or storing its weapons as part of the ceasefire with Israel. The comments come as the two sides approach the more complex second phase of their peace agreement. I think the idea of freezing their weapons or storing them, obviously it's a step in the right direction for them even to talk about that. But the idea that Israel, after the enormous sacrifices they have made and the behavior of Hamas, not only in terms of treatment of the hostages, but in terms of treatment of the citizens of Gaza, the idea that the Hamas is going to have to be allowed to maintain its weapons, I think is something that Israel is going to have a very, very tough time with. And then there is this breaking news from Politico. Peace talks between the U.S. and the Ukraine between the U.S. and the Ukraine, two nations that should be allied and really are allied. We have given aid, substantial aid to Ukraine, not as much as our European allies, but a great deal. Peace talks between the U.S. and Ukraine have stumbled over one main issue: how to force Ukraine to give up what the Kremlin has failed to seize during the war. The entirety of the Donbas region. That's a part of Ukraine, and it's about a third or a fourth, depending on how you define the boundaries of the territory of Ukraine as an independent nation. On the territory issue, Americans are simple. This is a senior European official familiar with the negotiation process and what he told Politico on the condition of anonymity. Again, on the territory issue, Americans are simple. Russia demands Ukraine to give up territories. And Americans keep thinking how to make it happen. In other words, we take the side of Russia in these negotiations, which launched a completely unprovoked and bloody invasion of a neighboring country, claiming a great deal of that neighboring country's land and sovereignty. A senior official spoke to Politico and on condition of anonymity to discuss a sensitive matter. Quote, "The Americans insist that Ukraine must leave the Donbas one way or another," the official added. And the White House has rejected a report that said that President Donald Trump is considering replacing Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem, who has overseen a major immigration crackdown central to the administration's agenda. The major immigration crackdown has been almost entirely on people without any criminal record, people who do not have judgments against them or sentences against them or pending deportation notices. The Bulwark reported on Saturday citing three unnamed former DHS officials who are in touch with current staff, that Trump was considering moving on from Noem. This apparently has nothing to do with a controversial choice of styling by Kristi Noem, and the picture really is amazing. Kristi Noem wears a sombrero at her birthday dinner. The sombrero is I think the color they describe is raspberry. It's sort of purplish with a few gold stitches in it. And there are people commenting with the posted photograph on her website. What is wrong with her? I hope they spit in her food. That's another comment. And a comment from someone said, "Alert jellyfish. I wish they would all face the consequences of the atrocities they have all added in committing, but aided. They have all aided in committing, pardon me, but they won't, bro. This is America." And the caption for the photograph that produced, she has an open mouth. She seems to be delighted with the sombrero. Kristi Noem prompted criticism online for wearing a sombrero during a recent birthday. Is she making fun of the fact that a substantial portion of the people who she is deporting may, in fact, be of Mexican heritage? Meanwhile, there is a brand new poll with some shocking, really shocking results. It's a poll that was conducted between December 2nd and the 4th, so a good sampling of year-end sentiment. And they asked people, respondents on the poll, to rate leading political figures. And according to those figures, Americans are divided. There's nobody who is overwhelmingly positive. But the most positive figure in this poll is a shock. It is not the President of the United States. It is not Gavin Newsom. Who is it? someone who manifestly doesn't deserve it, will tell you coming up on the Michael Medved Show. And yes, Jingle Bells in a minor key. It's part of a Christmas album, which is called A Klezmer Christmas. And it is a very amusing album, actually. It uses traditional Jewish music and uses that to give a different cast to songs like Jingle Bells. And part of what I understand about this song and like the way it's arranged is it goes from the minor key sort of mournful sound to a more celebratory sound. And there are all kinds of things to celebrate, particularly as we come up to this 250th anniversary year for the United States of America. Big year. And they did as I mentioned before the break, a Harvard-Harris poll that was conducted between December 2nd and 4th about various political figures and their approval ratings by the American public. And the president, as he is in virtually every poll, there are no exceptions, he's rated negatively. People do not approve of President Trump. They don't think he's doing a great job. The president had a favorability rating of 45%. That is much higher than the average favorability rating he has, but he has an unfavorable rating of 49%. Now that contrasts with J.D. Vance, whose numbers are tied. He has 40% favorable and 40% unfavorable. So who is leading the pack? Well, there are several members of the Trump cabinet who get either split or slightly favorable ratings. And they include Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State. And by the way, that's the same is true for Gavin Newsom, Democrat, who is basically viewed favorably by the same number of people who view him unfavorably. So who's the one most favorably rated individual? He's known by his initials. The initials are RFK and RFK Jr. And it's a shock. How is it possible that the reason it's possible is people see the name Kennedy and they don't necessarily associate it with him. And yes, I know you'd have to be pretty sloppy in terms of your coverage of the news to think that RFK, not to understand that he is nothing like his late father. But I think there are a lot of people who don't pay close attention to the news, and they think, oh, he's a member of the Kennedy family. I like them. And he was viewed favorably, believe it or not, by 43% of those who were polled, and unfavorably by just 40%. This means that he has a favorable gap of 3% favorable, which makes him more popular than anybody else on the Washington scene right now. And by the way, there's another piece from The Hill which shows that more than half of voters now say that President Trump is losing the battle against inflation. Now, this, despite the fact that President Trump always says, I mean, this is virtually every day, there's some kind of statement about how he has conquered inflation and he inherited the worst inflation that ever existed, which is not true. It's not even close to true. But President says it all the time. But that right now prices are going down, 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 and they're not. People are living this. I was speaking to my daughter recently, and it's very notable that prices are going up, particularly for groceries that people care about. And so The Hill shows that more than half of voters say President Trump is losing the battle against inflation amid concerns about affordability under his administration. This, according to a Harvard Capps Harris poll released today. The poll found that 57% of voters, including 21% of Republicans, thought the president is losing the battle against inflation. That's down slightly from the 60% who said the same last month. Okay, so that puts things into some context. And concerning the firing of Kristi Noem, no, it does not have to do with her sombrero. But there's also news from the Supreme Court today, which heard oral arguments on this case about the president's power to fire people. And again, this is ironic because, of course, with President Trump's TV show, which, by the way, was never a ratings champion. I mean, it got serviceable ratings, but it was never the top-rated show on television, as President Trump has said that it was. But, okay, CNN is reporting the Supreme Court seems to be on the verge of giving Trump more power. A majority of the Supreme Court today appeared ready to back President Donald Trump's argument that he should be able to fire members of independent agencies that for nearly a century have been protected from presidential politics. During more than 2 hours of oral arguments, the court's 6-3 conservative majority leaned heavily into an attorney representing Rebecca Kelly Slaughter, who was fired by Trump from the Federal Trade Commission in March. And she's suing, saying that he doesn't have the right to fire her. They have suggested that for Rebecca Kelly Slaughter, that the arguments of her lawyers could lead to a significant remaking of federal government. Justice Brett Kavanaugh, who is, of course, one of the people that Trump appointed to the Supreme Court, Brett Kavanaugh at one point asked Slaughter's attorney about the argument that independent agencies are not accountable to the people. And again, with the idea that independent agencies should be accountable to the people and should, in fact, have the ability for the president to represent the people and the public will that elected the president of the United States. This is a significant case, and it would be a very big victory for Trump. But the big case coming up, of course, that everybody is looking at is the case that could end up repealing the first clause of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States that provides birthright citizenship, that if somebody is born in this country, someone automatically becomes a citizen of this country. We won't get that case decided. They won't hear our oral arguments for several weeks, but then the case won't be decided apparently until March at the very earliest. And everyone's waiting on that.
This episode is brought to you by Blink. Doom scrolling during this ad break? Ditch the doom and get peace of mind with new Blink 2K Plus Smart Security. Check on home from your phone with 2K Clarity, noise cancellation, and 4x Zoom. Plus, setup is so simple you can easily install while listening to your favorite podcast. True crime girlies? We got you. Get more, spend less with Blink 2K Plus Smart Security.
And on the Michael Medved Show, happy 250-year anniversary for the United States of America. Aside from the events last night at the Kennedy Center, which were amusing, somewhat surprising, and featured President Trump clearly enjoying himself, there was also a nasty, particularly nasty video that was released by Joy Reid on a podcast. And Joy Reid, of course, the very outspoken left-leaning progressive Democrat who used to have her own spot on MSNBC, but she's now more of an independent commentator. And this comment, Happy Birthday, USA, as we come up to the 250th year in 2026, Joy Reid was talking about the nation's founding. Here is what she had to say for this anniversary year.
So, this nation was founded by killers who slaughtered 90% of the indigenous people, leeches who glommed off of the indigenous who taught them how to survive in the wilderness and then murdered them as their things and then took all their land. And you want to talk about entitlement. They felt entitled to own other people and they didn't even want to pay taxes on it. So they decided to have a whole war with Britain.
This is, of course, outrageous. And when she talks about slaughtered 90% of the indigenous people, where? Because it's not true. We actually have more indigenous people who identify as indigenous people than lived here when white settlers arrived. The idea of most of the death, and this has been so clearly established by every responsible historian, most of the death that was suffered by Native Americans had to do with disease. And no, it wasn't because they were given infected blankets with smallpox. They didn't understand that at the time. I mean, the whole idea of how diseases spread was not something that British settlers were conscious of. And the idea of organized massacres, it's one of those things we write about in the book, The 10 Big Lies About America, because this is probably the biggest lie that most people need to be informed about. Is, again, this came out shortly after Thanksgiving. The Pilgrims were celebrating a peace agreement that they had made with the Wampanoags, with the local Indian tribe and the leader of that tribe, Massasoit. And the celebration of that peace, it lasted for 50 years. And again, the killing that went on for Indians was largely Indians against each other. People who were identified as Algonquins versus people who were identified as Iroquois. And people of one tribe fighting another, and fighting for local control and then national control. And then right after she spoke about the, quote, slaughter of Indians, she talked about slavery without acknowledging the fact that many Indian tribes actually owned slaves and bought black slaves and used those people. And it's particularly famous for the Cherokee. And even today, there are people, because the Cherokee tribe is very wealthy because of oil resources in Oklahoma and where they were moved to. But in any event, the idea is today you still have black individuals whose ancestors were slaves, but who were ancestors of slaves, not, quote, owned, as enslaved people who were enslaved by the Indian populations, the indigenous populations. And the entire position of Joy Reid is so unfortunate, and it doesn't help to get people to want to make the country better and more positive. There's also a nasty bit of rhetoric from Ilhan Omar. This is clip 8 coming up. She was on CBS Face the Nation, And she is an immigrant, let it be known, who has basically assimilated. She went through a naturalization process. She was born in Somalia, yes, but she is here now. She got naturalized as a U.S. citizen, got herself elected to Congress. But she had this to say about expectations from immigrants that are actually historic and virtually universal and reasonable. This is clip 8.
How do you understand this?
I mean, when I think about Stephen Miller and his white supremacist rhetoric, it reminds me of the way the Nazis described Jewish people in Germany. And, you know, as we know, there have been many immigrants who've tried to come to the United States who've turned back, one of them being Jewish immigrants. We know the way that people were described who were coming from Ireland, Irish immigrants. We know the way in which people were described back then when they were Italian immigrants. And to me, you know, we're yes, of course, ethnically Somali. We are in this country as Americans.
Yeah.
We are citizens. We are productive part of this nation, and we will continue to be.
All of that is fine, but what she said was that it was reminiscent of the Nazis to expect American immigrants to assimilate. The Nazis didn't welcome assimilation. They opposed it, and they had particular ferocity on Jewish people who lived as Germans. People, frankly, like my grandfather, who served in the Kaiser's army in World War I because he was a patriotic German doing his duty at the same time that he lived with a religious commitment to Judaism. So this idea that expectations that we've had in this country, that people who come from other countries will learn English and will protest with, the immigrants themselves had that idea. And that's always been one of the glorious aspects of the United States of America, is that you could, because of the Declaration of Independence, which, as Abraham Lincoln said in the Gettysburg Address, it was the Declaration of Independence that set up the idea and the American ideal that all men are created equal. But that doesn't mean that all ideas are created equal. It doesn't mean that all cultures are created equal or that all national values. And the idea that Ilhan Omar thinks that it's Nazi-like to have hopes that people will become fully American and join this country in every way, it seems to me, is very destructive. We will be right back on The Medved Show.
I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, just like the ones I used to know.
That's, is that Burl Ives, Jeremy? Is that who that is? It's Burl Ives, who was here when I was a young child back in another era. He was a gigantic and gigantically popular American singer. Of course, the version that everybody celebrates is Bing Crosby, who also had a wonderful voice. But Burl Ives also did songs for kids, which is one of the reasons I recognize the voice all these years later. Meanwhile, there is a breaking news about Alina Habba. The name may sound familiar. She was the very glamorous, and she is, former personal lawyer to Donald Trump, who resigned today as the acting U.S. attorney for the District of New Jersey. That was a post that Chris Christie used to hold. This was following an appeals court ruling finding that she was not qualified and properly appointed to serve in her position. So she was serving in her position, which was temporary anyway. She was serving in that position unlawfully. Habba is, of course, a staunch defender of President Trump as his attorney, personal attorney, as she was, and on the campaign trail. And she did a very provocative dance at that rally at Madison Square Garden, remember, at the very end of the campaign. And she came out in flaming red and pleased the crowd, but not through her legal abilities, but from her terpsichorean abilities, her abilities as a dancer. In any event, she said she will step down to protect the stability and integrity of the office, which I love. In other words, she's recognizing the best thing she can do to protect the integrity of her office is to quit it. Yeah, good for you. I think that this is a terrifically logical thing for her to do. She added, but do not mistake compliance for surrender. She wrote in a statement shared on X, this decision will not weaken the Justice Department, and it will not weaken me. There is also something else that is going to be very controversial and probably will weaken the Trump administration to some extent. But the report from USA Today and elsewhere is outrage as Donald Trump replaces two major holidays with his own birthday. Now, don't worry, you're still free to celebrate the holidays. The holidays he wants to replace with his own birthday are Martin Luther King's birthday and Juneteenth. And it has been revealed over the weekend that the U.S. National Park Service, the NPS, is removing Martin Luther King Jr. Day and Juneteenth from its list of fee-free holiday entrance days. The 79-year-old U.S. president's birthday, however, which is the 14th of June, and also falls on the Flag Day national holiday, has been added to the list along with the 4th of July weekend and President Theodore Roosevelt's birthday. Martin Luther King Jr. Day takes place on the third Monday of January every year, or the one closest to his birthday on January 15th. And it is a federal holiday to honor the life and legacy of the American clergyman, activist, and leader in the civil rights movement. Meanwhile, Juneteenth, which is on the 19th of June every year, is now celebrated to commemorate the end of slavery in the United States. Donald Trump's latest move has sparked backlash. Well, what do you think? Of course it has. According to the BBC, the shock move is part of Trump's, quote, modernization of the National Park Service, which is set to begin in 2026 next year, and also includes changing the park's cost structure to favor American citizens over foreign visitors following a July executive order. As they pointed out, Trump has added his own birthday to the list, marking it as a patriotic fee-free day. However, people who are not U.S. citizens will still have to pay fees on the fee-free dates, the National Park Service has said. In other words, if you are visiting here from, let's say India. Last time I was hiking at Mount Rainier National Park, not far from where I live, the trails were full of people who appeared to be visitors from India, or they may have been new American residents who were from India, but there they were. In any event, they have to pay, and pay a lot. In the 2026 calendar year, U.S. citizens will be granted free access to national parks on President's Day, Memorial Day, President Trump's birthday, and also noted as Flag Day, Independence Day weekend, the 110th birthday of the National Park Service, Constitution Day, Theodore Roosevelt's birthday, and Veterans Day. Now, Theodore Roosevelt's birthday has some sense to it because he didn't invent the national parks, but he did a great deal to help build our national parks and monuments. In any event, while the Biden administration previously had recognized both Martin Luther King Jr. Day and June 15th as fee-free days, now U.S. residents will have to pay $80 for an annual Park Service pass. They have a special offer that they make available to people over 65, I believe it is. For non-residents, however, the ticket cost is going up. If you're not a resident of the United States, you're a visitor, you'll pay $250 for a Park Service pass, the Department of Interior announced last month. A comment that came to the website from one of these said, Martin Luther King Day and Juneteenth will no longer be holidays that get you into the national parks for free. They've been replaced by Donald Trump's birthday. This is not a parody. National parks will now recognize Trump's birthday over Black history. And then who agrees that these things need to be restored by the next president, if not sooner, when Democrats take control? Who knows that this is a partisan issue? And then there is one commentator who puts forward, while someone else demanded, quote, I will go to the national parks on Martin Luther King Day, even at June 19th, if Juneteenth, and I will pay. But I refuse to go on Trump's birthday, even for free. There's no reason that Trump's birthday, I mean, unless they're planning to, I don't know, take one of the famous scenes and carve into rock somewhere, Happy Birthday, Donald Trump, into El Capitan in Yosemite National Park or something of that nature. I think that's unlikely. Coming up, Marjorie Taylor Greene appeared on 60 Minutes last night, and it triggered Trump. He had terrible things to say about Marjorie Taylor Greene. Again, calls her in writing Marjorie Tater Brown. No, he didn't call her Tater, not a potato. Marjorie Traitor Brown, and brown because things turn brown when they're rotten. What got him so angry? We will also be talking about it's the comedy Stupid. The Trump administration has voiced optimism and urged patience, but Americans continue to face consistently high prices. And there is a new study that says they are less and less confident about our economic future. This reported by the Wall Street Journal. We will get to that and much more. Also about a movie that is looking like an Oscar sure winner. Which one? We'll get to that and more in This Greatest Nation on God's Green Earth.